Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Liese and today I am giving you my October wrap-up. I don't have a particular name for the creature I'm emulating here. It's just some kind of undead thing that has like creepy cracks in her face. So I've read 5 about maybe 6 full-length novels since we last talked, and several novellas. First of all, I will bring up Only When It's Us, whose author name I can't remember, and I don't remember where the book is. That was a library book that I was reading about 2 weeks ago, so it's about at the edge of my memory. It was a romance that I read because it was the only book by an author that I got recommended on Instagram by a asexual book reviewer who commonly reviews that type of book, also aromantic books, but this particular author wrote a asexual rap book, and the reviewer said that this author also tends to have a lot of disability rep in their books. So I went out trying to find whatever book my library might have to see if I should ask them to buy me this new book or if I should buy this new book, and it was pretty good. I didn't love it a whole ton. It is a mutual irritants to lovers trope. So if you enjoy that banterous dynamic, that was entertaining, certainly. There was a lot of secret keeping and people being offended at the other person keeping secrets, even though they are also like just keeping things private because, you know, there's a lot of things going on in these people's lives that they don't necessarily want to share with someone they just met at college. So it was a little bit frustrating, the lack of communication creating problems where it was a little bit contrived, and it was a little bit more dramatic than either person needed to make it, but they were also each dealing with their own past hurts and rejections that they had felt, so like they were guarding against that happening again, which I get. I did really like their chemistry. Sometimes I don't really feel that between characters, it's just like the author has decided they're gonna get together, but I really felt the relationship of these two, and like it wasn't just that they were thrust together by school, it really felt like these two people matched each other well. The representation that this one has is deaf representation. It is someone who became deaf later in life and who is not immersed in deaf culture, which is a very different thing from someone who's born deaf or who becomes immersed in the culture if they become deaf later on. Because the main character didn't know sign language, and he also got a hearing implant, which a lot of deaf people who are more immersed in the culture, I have heard, prefer not to necessarily do because they don't want to become hearing like everybody else. They think that there is nothing wrong with the way they are. And so like, but obviously someone who came into being deaf later on and whose whole family is hearing and who doesn't have any deaf friends, makes sense they would feel differently. Next, I read the new book by Helen Hoang, which I've been looking forward to for a long time, and because I absolutely loved her previous 2 books, which were autistic romances, where one member of the relationship was autistic. The other 2 are Kiss Quotient and Bride Test. And I just this one was particularly emotional. The author put a bit more, what's it called? Autobiographical stuff into it. She talked about that in the afterword. And so it was a bit more hard-hitting than the other 2, although the others were also very hard-hitting for me personally. This one was even more so because it deals with burnout, which is brutal. I thought about making an entire video about it, but I don't really. But I have in the past videoed trauma dumps and then not, what's it called, published them. I've cut them out of the video, and that is pretty cathartic for me, so I thought about doing that, but I ended up just sort of processing it by myself without talking it out aloud, and that worked out all right. But basically, I have been in a stage of burnout for almost 5 years, and I'm not I'm not back in fighting form. Of course, before burnout, an autistic person tends to function at a higher level, do more normal people stuff, allistic people stuff, than they were ever really capable of doing, and that's what leads to the burnout. Autistic burnout is basically when an autistic person overworks themselves, either through just doing too much, which can be a problem because a lot of us have chronic fatigue and are spoonies. If you're familiar with that term, there's a lot of information on the internet about it. Or also specifically masking, which means hiding our artistic traits. Doing that, especially 24/7, is worst. Just 9 to 5 for a work week or a school week is also very bad. That also leads to burnout. So mine was a combination of those things, and the main character, whose name was Anna, I think, was basically also those things. Fortunately, my family is not as toxic as hers, but a lot of the time I felt so bad for her. I wanted her to be in a better place and to accept herself, because at the beginning of the book she doesn't know she's autistic, and it just, my hyper empathy kicked in, along with it being something that's very similar to my own experience. She was in a bad place and it hurt a lot, and it reminded me of all the autistic people out there who don't know why they're different. One of the ways in which it was similar to the author's experience is that the reason that this book was delayed was because she had rejection sensitive dysphoria problems, being able to get it done, and also burnout issues with working on it. So it's really cool to hear people I admire the work of talk about struggling with the same things that I do. So it was really awesome. I really recommend it, but it is emotionally heavy, like so heavy. There are more trigger warnings to be looked up than the topics I've just discussed, so be aware of that. The next book that I got into, that the library made available right after, was Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao. It was amazing. Like, Rachel reviewed this several months ago as what's it called? An ARC, and said that it was amazing, and I really hoped that it would be, and it was. It totally lived up to expectations. It was amazing. I've also found the author on TikTok, and the TikToks that she made really also helped set up my expectations, and they were very high, and I was very excited. So it is a futuristic sci-fi with mechas. The author said it was a lot like this one anime where they get into big machines and pilot them. I wish I could remember what it's called, but I had watched it, and so when she said that on her TikToks, I was like, I know what that is! And it kind of helped me picture what was going on. And it's that mixed with, I believe, specifically Chinese mythology, where all of the big mechs are in the shapes of various mythological creatures, and like they're formed kind of with magic as well as technology. A small amount of technology, mostly magic. The piloting system is more the technological aspect, but there's a lot of but what the power they run on, am I confusing this with a different book? No, it's this book. The energy source is chi, which the pilots control with their bodies and minds. They control the flow of the chi and how it interacts with their environment and their mech. I'm calling it that because it's like a universally understood word. That's not what they're called in the book, because I can't remember what they are called. And that's a very cool part, but there's also a big socio-political part that's all about, it's mainly about sexism, a little bit of classism, mostly sexism, some racism, where the women are relegated to less than second-class citizens, more like non-humans, basically. Made just for men to either marry them and have children, or to be the co-pilot of the head pilot who like runs the mech, and they just give him their energy, their chi, and he actually channels it, and then they die because he like sucks the life out of them. So that's the big point of the book, and the main character is amazing, and there is a polyamorous relationship that is talked about, I believe, in the blurb, and the author definitely talks about it in her TikToks. It's like a, what's it called? Not considered a spoiler because it is a advertising point, to make people want to read it. And it's really cute. This relationship is this group of relationship. It's a very angry feminism book, and it's quite cathartic in its viciousness and its decisiveness, where and it like addresses things like women and other people who are subjugated try to work within the system and will put other women and other oppressed groups down, and will help with the oppression in order to make their situation ever so slightly better. It's still not okay, and they're and they are still perpetuating it, even if they also live under it, and it is their choice to do that, and it's not okay. And I liked that, and there were just lots of different aspects that were addressed, and like different methods that patriarchy uses to reinforce itself. The patriarchy is used to maintain other types of power, like political power, and that was very interesting as well. There were lots of political machinations, a little bit Hunger Games-y, where the government doesn't like you, but you're able to fight so well that they'll like keep you and make a public figure out of you to like maintain power of the populace, but you don't actually have much power over your own life, and like they control everything about you, and you have to like navigate this to try to keep yourself alive. That was very interesting, and it was just really satisfying to read, and I'm very much looking forward to the next ones. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy. I don't think it's more than that, but then I read more books by Jeffe Kennedy, which is the first 3 books that are set in this universe that I had read last time, the 5-book series. And they feature the 3 big sisters who are still important in the next 5 books, Ursula, Andromeda, and Amelia. And it has their individual romances that they put together in each book, that also contains an arc of a epic fantasy story. Evil emperors and magical kingdoms, big battles and little battles, and political machinations, big magic that is affected by little symbolic things, and I enjoyed that a lot. The middle one with Amelia is very young at heart, also very young, but very young at heart. She's like 18, and she's 5 years younger than her middle sister Andromeda, and then 5 more years younger than Ursula. There's 5 years between each sister, so like she's a lot younger than her sisters. So she acts a lot younger than her sisters. It makes perfect sense, but also she's much more protected, and so she's not as old as she could have been if she had been traumatized as much as the other ones. So she's very irritating for the first like 45% of the book. After that, she's way more likable. She purposefully takes a very abrupt turn in her character arc, and I liked that she did that on purpose. But I think my favorite was definitely the Talon of the Hawk, which is Ursula, who's a very cool character that I knew from the other books I had read, who's a warrior, heir to the throne, and she's very well trained in political strategy and ruling a kingdom and all of the logistics that go into that, as well as being a warrior, because her father, who trained her, was a warrior king who did all of the logistics, the politics, and also conquered all the kingdoms that he currently rules. And I really like her romance with the mercenary that is working for her father when she comes back from where she's been for the last book. Really like the ending of that one. Sometimes final battles can be way too drawn out and get boring with how many complexities the author feels the need to add in order to make it epic enough. I really liked how this one was like really important and like took a lot of emotional toll to do, but wasn't so complicated. That was nice. Then there are several novellas that take place in between or during the other books, and one is The Crown of the Queen, The Snows of Windroven, and now I'm reading The Dragons of Summer, and those feature shorter stories that either are characterization and further developments of romances, because we only got one book for each romance, or are like important transitionary phases, like The Crown of the Queen is about the transition between the first trilogy and the quintet that comes after it. I think that's all that I've read the last half of this month. I just want you to take a closer look at this cat that I found in Target in their discount Halloween section, because they're already discounting Halloween, even though when I'm filming this it's like the 29th or something. But it's a cat! I love cats! It's so cute. And this blanket, which I don't know how well you can tell, but it has little orange cats on it with stars on them, and some of them have witch hats, and I love it, and it's from the Nordstrom rack. I think that's everything. I'd love to know what you've been reading this month, and if you have any thoughts on any of these books. Have you done anything fun and seasonal this year, like played in leaves, or trick-or-treating is mostly out, I think, because of circumstances, but have you dressed up in the safety of your own home like I have? Or, you know, had other fun watching horror movies or reading horror books, perhaps. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!